Studios. We have an officer basically around the neck area.
These two retired Vegas cops now podcast hosts.
They don't have ID. They can't get into a hotel room. To get them the help they need, especially if someone even gets arrested. A lot of people don't know how the justice system works.
You guys have going on is necessary, it's needed.
Hey everybody, this is David Kohlmeier, the problem solver. I'm just bouncing my head away to the music. Welcome. Today is Thursday. I have to think about what day today is. Thursday, 4:30 approximately. We're live here in Las Vegas, Sticky Pod Studio. Welcome everybody. Today we have our every week it seems like it changes up a little bit, but we have some amazing co-hosts as usual. Laura Powers, celebrity psychic. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
She's going to facilitate psychic ability here and hopefully tell us something that we don't know. And then we have Danny Miner, a.k.a. The Miracle, a.k.a. The Crime Solver, a.k.a. Mr. Italian Good Looking. Welcome.
Listen, I have so many names. I think I told you I'm just going to be a symbol now. I'm going to be like Prince. Okay. Crime Solver, The Miracle, whatever. Just, I don't know. Think of a symbol.
What is your symbol?
I don't know. We got to think of one. What could be my symbol?
With the logo.
You know, I like the Crime Solver. I'm the problem solver. He's the Crime Solver, kind of matches type of thing, you know? Luckily, the Crime Solver was available for $8 instead of $10,000 from the crimesolvers.com, whoever has that one. But yeah, Danny's got a lot of different titles, which is great. We all have, as we grow and so on. So today we have Vicky Greco as a guest. Thank you, Vicky, for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Actually, move the mic a little bit closer to you. That's perfect. Yeah.
Perfect.
So we're going to talk about a few things in general, just like a little housekeeping stuff. And then Vicky's basically, you know, I've known Vicky for a while. She's a great person. I'm glad that she's come on the show. She gets to share her story, which a lot of people come on the show, share their story in different ways. And I think Vicky has a great story to share. Very interesting. Just like we all have different stories of our lives. But I wanted to say, so I know that Laura was in Egypt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want to share what happened to you in Egypt at all?
Sure. Yeah.
It's kind of a good topic as well.
Yeah,
sad
it
to
is
say.
Something that ends up coming up for me over and over again, and I think for many women. So while I was in Egypt and I was staying at a five-star resort, so just to say it was a high-class upscale place. And I was groped by a security guard. So not just groped by someone who was employed to keep me safe at the resort. And, one of the things that's come up about this is like, yes, I was in another country, and some people express that might be because, more likely because I was there. But actually, even though it's bad that it happened, the hotel in some ways handled it better than in the United States.
Did it?
Because, like, for example, I got groped at the South Point, and one of the first responses from the security was to question whether it happened.
Right.
Whereas at least at this hotel, they immediately took me seriously and reviewed the security footage and confirmed that this guy did grope me. But it's a huge problem, and it's especially a problem at hotels where, people go, foreigners go, and then, they get assaulted. And thankfully, as far as, that type of situation goes, it was not as bad as it could have been. I wasn't raped or anything. I was basically groped.
Right.
When you say grope, if you don't mind me asking, not to rehash the whole thing, but just for people, what is that? Just like touched by the buttocks?
Grabbed my butt, yeah.
But grabbed it.
Yeah.
And he's in uniform at the time?
Yeah. He was working the security, and I had gone with my friend that I was traveling with, and we walked in, and he came up and asked to take a photo with us, and then he grabbed me.
Right.
So it's,
So did they look at the cameras? Were they that advanced in Egypt?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they have cameras everywhere.
Okay.
And so they immediately looked at the footage, confirmed. And what they told me was that he got fired. I mean, there's no way for me to know that
really?
for sure. But so...
Did they comp your stay?
No, and that's the thing that made
God.
me irritated. I'm actually contesting it with my credit card because I'm like, I did not get a relaxing holiday.
Right.
And not only, was it obviously horrible to get groped and assaulted, but I spent several hours talking with the management about, and I was like, should we call the cops? And, it's a very difficult situation when you're a foreigner in a different country to know how to handle something like that. And also we were flying out the next night. So I didn't have, I couldn't be like, I'm going to stay 2 days and deal with the police without major problems for me and my schedule.
You know what's interesting with certain credit cards, like American Express is really good. Like if you dispute and say that you're like a victim of a crime and by a hotel guest. That sounds like a good dispute, but some cards wouldn't do it in general. It'd be interesting to try and articulate in general because of your experience, and it was upsetting and distraught and stuff like that. But
yeah, so I'm still going through the process.
Got it.
But I was kind of shocked that they weren't willing to do anything
Did
at
you
the
ask
hotel.
them and they said no?
I did, because I was like, look, we didn't get a relaxing holiday, and also we literally spent several hours meeting with management. First the on-site manager the night that it happened, and then the next morning the manager of the entire hotel.
How many nights were you there?
Just 2 nights. So, I mean, considering only 2 nights, to spend several hours on something is quite annoying.
Exactly.
I was saying, she was texting when she was in Egypt, and I was saying that, I'm thinking just this country is probably not going to really care,
Right.
and not really going to do much in general. I guess it depends if it's maybe like a Hilton where it's like a franchise and it's got a name and stuff like that. But I just felt like a lot of these countries, just like anything goes. I'd be afraid. Like, I was afraid, I went to Israel, my wife wanted to drive through Egypt, from the bottom of Israel. She's just talking about like it's California. Let's just drive through the desert in Egypt, like there's no problem, And so I would be a little bit nervous. I was kind of a little nervous for you as well, because I felt, a lot of these countries also, women are like, they're, some of them can treat them like a second-class citizen. I was afraid that you're going to be human trafficking in Egypt, and we have to look for a new co-host.
No, that I don't think that, at least for me, was a concern. I mean, I actually, in some ways, was pleasantly surprised with how seriously they took it, but they just weren't willing to do anything about the stay,
Right.
and the cost of the stay, which I think in the United States that probably would have been handled. But like I said, I was groped at the South Point, and they didn't handle it well. They didn't do anything either.
Danny actually gets groped a lot of times at the South Point with gambling. It was these older women like, hey, we really like your voice. You're so sexy. Are you the crime solver? We've been watching you
I
on
do hear
TikTok.
that all the time.
You do?
When you talk about human trafficking, I studied law school abroad, and with 2 other girls, we went through the University College of London, and we went to Ibiza, and we actually got kidnapped, and we escaped.
Oh my God.
And I mean, it was like 2 weeks before 9/11 happened, so things were still different back then. I'm old. This was a long time ago, but looking back, we were so lucky.
Where were
we didn't realize it at the time because we were in Ibiza.
Yeah.
But we did. We got kidnapped. They came in our room and
I think, these
changed
things can happen.
changed our plane tickets
all over. I was just hearing from a friend of in Mexico that this happened to girls he knew, where they just got taken from a nightclub, and then what they do is basically they got murdered right away, and then they gut them and put drugs inside, and then they go back over the border and have them in the car where they look like they're just asleep. And so they, so basically right when they're freshly murdered or whatever,
Oh my
they
God.
go in Mexico.
And
Yeah.
you know,
I know, the guy was telling me about it has happened to his
I mean, I
friends.
just don't see that happening in regards to like saying they sleep, because they wake them up
I don't know.
No, it's,
I mean,
if someone just looks like they're asleep in the back seat,
for Border Patrol. I just
they
don't
had
understand.
us, they had us locked in a room
yeah.
and
For how long? I've been to Ibiza. I mean, I didn't feel that was unsafe. but
so what happened, this was a long time ago, David. This was
Before 9/11?
before 9/11. It was that summer.
Okay.
And
I forgot when I was there.
we went to Ibiza after we graduated from our law school program, and we got on a plane and we had nowhere to go when we got there. So we met a flight attendant who was Israeli, and he's like, "Oh, I can help you find a room." So we all pile in his car, and we were just stupid, right? We get in the car, he takes us to a hotel room. That night, my 2 girlfriends wanted to go out, and I didn't. I stayed in, and that night somebody broke into our room and was like looking through our stuff, and I kind of was like, "Whoa, what happened here?" And so when I told them that the next day, we told these guys what happened, and so we said, "Take us out of here," and we went to their house.
Oh,
And
so
that's
you thought
when we
that
got locked in, but it was all a whole
safer.
exactly.
Oh wow.
I feel like in hotels is actually when a lot of really terrible things happen to women,
Yeah.
and there's the perception that you're safe and that they're going to try to take care of you. But I've been assaulted or had attempted assault by hotel workers in different countries several times, and so each time it was someone that was employed at the hotel where it was an issue, not an outsider.
Yeah, so they went as far because he was with the airline. They changed our plane tickets, made it look like it was us doing it. And when we finally escaped, I think it was 3 or 4 days later, we had to walk, we were in the hills of Ibiza, and we had to walk. My girlfriend got attacked by ravaged dogs.
Wow.
We showed up at the airport and we were dirty and
What
everything.
type of people, not to be discriminatory, was it Ibiza people? Was it
Israelis.
Israelis you saying kidnapped you?
Yeah.
And did you notify the police or what?
No, we just got to the air. So here's the thing. At the time, we didn't realize that this was all happening. Like,
They're still trying to piece
They
it
were
together.
locking us in. They were drugging us. Like,
Sometimes you're in shock, and it takes
Yeah.
you a while to piece things together.
we were just happy to get on the plane and get our plane tickets changed, and
How long were you there in Ibiza?
Yeah.
maybe like a week.
Got it. I was there actually. I felt safe, but the truth is, you got to be careful wherever you are in general.
Anywhere, yeah.
And the bottom line is that wherever you are, I think that you have to be extremely careful, especially if you're a woman and you're with a group of women. It could just be really. It's kind of scary to hear these different stories, and I know a lot of people get victimized in general. Jumping real quickly to Danny. Danny, I know you're working. Danny's been studying a lot of these nationwide murder cases, and I know that you have a criminal defense background as well. Have you been following it, Vicky? The
No.
4 college students that were murdered in Idaho.
Oh, okay. Yes, I've heard.
So anyway, Danny's been following. Danny, give us an update. And by the way, just wanted to let you know, we did do a news release and we did do a video because our show basically is offering reward money for an arrest and conviction of killers, whether it's 1 or 2. I know he has a little bit of update, but we did send out a news release actually today, and it's supposed to hit the media locally. But, our show is trying to do something in general. And so give us an update, Danny.
Well, I'll give you an update. Of course, I get all my news from TikTok.
TikTok's
TikTok's my news.
CNN today.
But
CNN.
have you guys been watching this case at all? Did you see them at the food truck, the
Yes.
girls?
I just from what you've been posting.
Yeah, the girls were at the food truck, and now the police cleared this guy at the food truck, but people are still very, very suspicious of him because the girls are at the food truck, and they actually turn around, and the one girl says, fuck you to him. Okay, so she turns around and says, fuck you to him at one point. And then at one point, they're pretending they're taking pictures of themselves. But you can see she put the camera real
To take
high
a photo of
so
him.
she can take a picture of the guy behind her. Okay, and then when they leave, he kind of leaves too. So they don't know if this is the guy or not. Now, there's rumors that he went to Africa now. But his parents go to Africa a lot. They're doctors. They go there, and I guess they work, voluntarily in Africa because they're doctors. So he does go there a lot. So it's iffy if he's a suspect or not. But a lot of people on TikTok believe he is. But the police came out and said he's cleared. The police said he has an alibi, and they cleared him. And they cleared him very early on. But one of the victim's fathers now is saying they think they cleared him too early. Okay. But now last night, the police came out, and remember you talked about taking license plates of all the cars at the crime scene. They came out and they're looking for a Honda Elantra that's white. I think between 2013, 2015. So there's a reason for this car. Okay. So that's the car they're looking for now. People want to know if it's a serial killer. I don't know. What do you think?
Vicky, this is something interesting since you did criminal defense in the past. Normally as cops, and I remember being brand new, I told the story before, if there was like a murder or major crime scene, some detective in New York City would come up to a patrol cop and say, hey, you, write down every single license plate on this street. And it's like the worst thing, right? It's like cold, it's raining.
Yeah, you're going outside.
You're
and
writing
like,
your plate down. And I never realized why it wasn't so important, but I was thinking about it, was you mentioned it on TikTok, is that it's a little bit more rural there. And then if the homicide took place between 2 and 6 in the morning and they went out and took plates, I'm assuming the guy left in a car.
Right.
So now I guess unless, it's weird. I just think that the car left. Now, some people could be a criminal and then leave the car there and then be on foot and get away different ways.
Right.
So I'm kind of thinking, where would that car be? Why are they looking for that car?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Because it's been a few hours when the murder happens, the person leaves, they're going to take the car most likely. And then the area is more of like a suburb community.
Yeah, but don't you think
the car wouldn't be left over
somebody
there?
might have had a camera and they saw a car going on the street, and
It's
maybe that's how they
possible.
got
It's
it.
possible.
I mean, that aspect of a surveillance, but it seemed like they weren't getting a lot of surveillance, and that's why they were asking for people in the community to come up. But like I said, I think that, like if there was a shooting that just took place right now, and you were there within like a minute or two,
Right.
they may have left the car. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Right there.
Right.
But this was several hours that took place, so it's interesting to follow this one. Like I said, this is kind of like that movie. What do you call it? Scary. what's it
Scream.
called? Scream.
Honest to God, it's
I'm saying
almost the
scary.
same thing. It's
like
maybe
Scream.
crazy.
You know?
the parody of that Scream.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So, but anyway.
But one last
Yeah.
thing. I mean, I think personally they don't have a suspect, and
Okay.
you see if you agree with me, especially with your police thing. When you have a suspect that's violent and dangerous to the public, you're going to do anything to get him in. So even if they have this much evidence on him, and I know we have a former defense attorney in there, but even if they have this much evidence on him, they're going to bring him in. They're going to use that and then try to gather evidence after they arrest him, okay? Because they don't want him to be out there. The other thing is, and I don't know if you did this, but if we had a suspect, we would pray to God he had traffic warrants. Am I right? Just to pick him up on the traffic warrant. Anything you could do to hold him. You don't want somebody that is in danger to the public out there. So my feeling is you're going on the 4th week, they have no suspect. That's my feeling. They have no suspect.
To share another, it's interesting you say that because of DNA. Like you mentioned that this case would be solved with DNA, and there's a New York City cop that I knew, a detective. He met with somebody, and a lot of times, like if you're like doing an interview interrogation, you may want to give someone a drink and use the cup, and then later on you get the fingerprints from the cup, right?
Right.
But I knew a guy, a detective, where he met some guy that was rapes taking place on the rooftops of these housing projects in New York City, and they wanted the DNA for the guy, so he had gum on him. The detective said, "You want a piece of gum?" So the guy starts chewing gum, and at the end he spits it out, and they get the DNA from the gum that he spit out on the floor.
Wow.
But the detective said, "Hey, you want a piece of gum?" You know, so it's very interesting. Normally you always hear about like fingerprints on cups. Here he gave him, I think maybe he did more difficult with a cigarette, you know, to get the DNA. But gum is a good one, right?
Get it. I got it from a soda can off somebody.
Yeah,
I think
I've
I told
heard
you
that
that.
before.
Yeah, I got it from a soda can. Guy left a soda can that he was drinking at the crime scene.
I
got him with that.
I know you haven't been following that much, but what are your thoughts when you hear like someone that's 4 people killed in a home, college town? Like, what do you think? You thinking stalker? You think random stranger? What's your take on that?
What's the crime rate in that area?
It's low.
I think there hasn't been a murder, I think, in 8 or 10 years.
Yeah, 8 or 10 years. That's
was
why.
8 years.
And the father is nervous because he doesn't think the cops have experience to do this. And I agree with him, kind of, because he told me the lead detective's 26 years old.
Yeah.
So he's thinking, how long has this guy been a cop? And he's a detective already? So I get it, because I worked in a small town.
And they don't have a lot of experience.
And I'm telling you, I worked in a small town, and sometimes you get like that. You want to put your chest up. We could do this, and don't ask for help. So I'm really hoping they ask for help, because small PDs, they just don't have the manpower or the equipment to do a good job. They really don't. So they have to ask for help.
And a lot of the times,
they don't.
Not all cops are like you guys.
Right.
Right. So a lot of the times they don't want to.
You're right. They don't, because you want to make the arrest. You want to say, I could do it.
Right.
And really, you have victims out there. These families are victims. You got to give them your best.
Were there any other girls with them there that night at the food truck that they've talked to or made statements about what was happening with that?
Well, here's the weird thing about the whole entire case. And I think this is the biggest mystery of all. There was 4 kids murdered that night. 2 girls were in one room. A guy and a girl were in the other room that were murdered. And then there was 2 other people that lived in that house. They didn't kill them too. They slept through the whole incident. They woke up the next morning. These people were murdered like 9 hours later. They woke up the next morning and found them dead.
And those 4 people that were murdered, were they all 4 at the food truck?
Yes, I believe they were.
And where are the other 2?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure.
So I would probably put it at something that happened.
Yeah, at the
there.
food truck.
If it was those 4, it had to be something that happened, and then I would say it wasn't a serial killer.
Yeah.
If it was a serial killer, I think he would have killed all 6.
Yeah, but here's the reason people are saying he's a serial killer. They're saying he's following Bundy's the way he did it, because there was a murder, and don't correct me if I'm wrong out there in TikTok, but there was a murder in Utah of a husband and wife. Somebody broke into their house and stabbed them to death. Okay, this was maybe a year or so ago. Then in, I believe it was Colorado, or I'm sorry, Idaho, I believe. There was 2 girls. Okay, they were camping. Broke into their camper, murdered them both. Same way, stabbing.
The FBI is not involved?
No, the FBI is involved now. Now
So
they believe Colorado is going to be the next place hit if they're following Bundy's thing.
So I'm seeing an image of someone, so I'll just share it. If I'm seeing it psychically, it seems probably important somehow. But it's a man, I think he's Caucasian, beard, dark hair, a bit heavy set. So
Okay.
I don't know if anyone that's of interest describes that. And then I also see, interestingly, a black car. I think it's either an SUV or maybe a truck.
Okay.
So anyway, just passing
That's
on the kind of
coming in
psychic
here.
impressions that
All
I'm
right.
getting.
All right. So TikTok out there, I just want to tell our audience.
Yeah.
Laura Powers is a celebrity psychic. We have her on our show a lot. She's there a lot with us. She believes it's a heavy-set man, right?
Well, I'm not saying that it's
him, but
necessarily,
somebody's coming.
It's being shown to me for a reason. So
Okay.
yeah, potentially suspect or someone that's of interest to somehow and connected somehow in the case.
Okay, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can clip that up and send that at the
Yeah, we'll
so
clip it
you
up.
know.
Yep, sounds good. All right.
I feel like we should just send Laura down to start investigating all these nationwide. I actually want to do that.
Listen,
I would like to
this is what
transfer you guys.
This is what I think we should
go
do.
down
Like
that.
when a
Yes.
crime like this happens, boom, you pay for us to fly out there. Listen,
like how you put that
I'll
out
pay
there,
for my
Danny.
own meals. I'll pay for my own
No,
meals.
you know, it's interesting because I think about that sometimes that if I always say one of the great things is that like in life, if you're able to jump on a plane when actually like real life things are taking place, like when there was Princess Diana died and there was like the funeral, like boom, you just jump on a plane, you go to the funeral. Or I actually felt bad. Ronald Reagan, when he died, I was out in Vegas. I never went to the funeral. I don't know why I keep saying funerals, but it's a weird situation, you know, when a lot of things are going on. It's cool if you could just jump there, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I do believe like in Idaho, like if you just went there, you're involved in all that,
Yeah.
you know, that realm. And then you start talking to people and stuff.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to do.
The other thing is that sometimes if it is a serial killer, they're hanging around. Like they kind of
Yes.
sometimes like to watch
Go
and
back to the
see-
location,
Yeah,
see what's
so
going on.
you could potentially, you know, get insight from just being around there. I have had
Yeah.
times where I'm like, that person's a serial. Like I feel being around them, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I was just going to say, I just lost my train of thought there. As you
The
just said.
problem solver doesn't have nothing to say. I never seen
I
that
just
before.
lost my thought there. No, I was going to say you should take pictures of the. Well, if you think someone's a serial killer, you should start taking pictures of these people.
It's happened
Anyway.
on dating apps from like, well, there's no way.
But anyway, I would say that it would be cool to kind of go out there and to be involved in it, to kind of investigate these different things that are nationwide, specifically as a crime solver. But I like the fact of the crime solver, which is something new that we're working on, is that you get the community involved in helping solve the crime. Because we always say that crime is not a police problem; it's a community problem. You have to get, you know, people involved.
Yep.
And then I think it's important. Vicky, I wanted to jump into Vicky's story in regards to. Well, here's just what I want to say, Vicky. So I don't know you that deep in general. We've been friends in general, but I normally when people come on the show, we always say, "Hey, tell us about yourself, where you're from, stuff like that." Whatever you want to go into, whatever we can learn about you, and then eventually other people can learn from different lessons. Like we're talking about here about groping and so on. How do you really combat that? We're talking about murder here in general, right? Like being out of a food truck at 2:00 in the morning in College Town. You know, some cycle. We'll see what happens with this case. But anything you want to share. But if you want to tell us about yourself, any stories that you want to go into, I know that you have a few interesting stories. I kind of mentioned to Danny the other day that a little bit of your story, and I said that you feel like you're a little bit of Robin Hood, and I do feel I understand where you come from in your situation, and I was always the type of cop where like I could understand why people would do it. Like I remember like running after somebody, they stole some jeans at the Galleria Mall, and when I stopped the guy, I asked the guy, "Why are you stealing?" He said, "Look, I have a felony." And I have a mortgage to pay, and I have kids, and I'm not saying it's right to steal, but basically he's stealing jeans to sell, to get money. He's got kids, he wants to buy food. I mean, it's all about survival.
Right.
If we were in the woods right now and we needed food, you know, you may kill, you know, you may steal, you may do different things. I'm not saying it's right, you know, these days, but you know, people can't get jobs when they have, you know, well, a lot of people can if you're an entrepreneur as well, but a lot of people, right, they can't get a job once they get arrested in general. But I always say in life, I can understand why people do things. I always felt bad taking people to jail, especially if they had a bad situation. But you know, it is what it is. You know.
I agree.
It is what it is. It is what it was,
Yeah.
is what I say, not what it is.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from originally, and you know.
So let me start with where I am today,
'Kay.
and then I'll go back.
Okay, good.
So today I have a nonprofit called the Frankie Foundation. And what we do is we help find people that are suffering from severe loss or trauma and death, for children and young adults losing a parent. And we help find them and place them with resources so that they don't have to live in the trauma for the next 15, 20 years and have to wind up doing a lot of inner child work. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's what I've had to do. So how it started was I'm Italian, from the Bronx. From a very big family.
When I heard your last name, I knew you were Italian.
From a very big family, and part of my family was probably criminals, and the other half were cops. Okay, my dad was the biggest sergeant in New York.
I understand.
And you know, and then my uncle ran the club across the street where we had to knock to go in.
Yes,
right?
I understand. My dad had a back room at his business.
Yes, and we had, you know, we had five families living on our
Yes.
compound in the Bronx. And when I was kind of young, around 8 or 9, my mom just wanted to get us away from that whole lifestyle. And my dad got hurt on the job, and he retired out to California. So my whole family moved out to California. And when I was 16, I came home from school one day and half my family was killed in a car accident.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Well, they say you're healed when you can tell your story without crying.
Right.
Okay, so I've had a lot of trauma,
Oh my God.
a lot of stuff that's gone on in my life. But after that happened,
By the way, how old again? You told us how old were you again? when
I
that
was
happened?
16.
And then who passed away again?
My mother and brother were killed in a car accident.
And you were 16.
So my brother died immediately. That was Frankie. Frankie's last words were, "I'm happy." So the foundation is that death doesn't always have to bring sadness and trauma, that sometimes death can be seen as happy. Frankie, you're a psychic. Frankie always was talking about like being in the Vietnam War with my dad. And so a couple days before Frankie actually died, his class had to do a coat of arms. And one of the questions on the coat of arms was, if you were to die tomorrow, how would you want people to remember you? And all the kids in the class were saying, I'm rich, I'm a star, I'm a rock star, or whatever. Frankie's was, I am happy. And he died from the jaws of life. The jaws of life took about 9 hours, and he was crushed in the car. And my mom, they were driving a convertible. My mom was flung out of the car 2 rows across, and she was actually taken to the hospital in a coma but never recovered, and we had to pull the plug like 6 days later.
One of my big goals as a psychic is to help people look at death differently, because I mean, obviously there is trauma, there's loss, and I'm not trying to minimize that, but to understand that, when a soul crosses over, it's a beautiful thing for them, and it's hard for us, and we have to heal and come to terms with that, but that it's actually a really beautiful process.
These
And it's something
days-
we all have to go through, right? No one, think about life, no one gets out of it alive.
These days, most of the time, I'm walking in the 4th and 5th dimension, and I'm pretty sure you know what that
Yes,
means.
absolutely.
I don't talk about that too often, but it took me 34 years to get here.
Yeah.
And in that 34 years, a lot of trauma. I suffer from chronic PTSD. After my mom and brother were killed, my dad did not take it so well.
Of course.
And so we wound up in foster care. And the foster care system is not where you are supposed to put grieving children. They're supposed to be loved and taken in by the adults that are supposed to be taking charge. And that just didn't happen. And so for many, many years, I suffered from what's called like an imposter syndrome. I don't know if you guys know what that is.
Yeah.
Where you don't think you deserve anything, and always helping everybody else instead of helping yourself because you don't feel worthy.
And I think a lot of people that have trauma have that.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so hence I one of the things, I could have gone into drugs. I could have gone into a lot of different bad things for my life, but education for me was my power, was my crutch, was the only thing that I could ever rely on, because I was always very, very intelligent. So I go to college in Chicago, which is where we were in foster care, because my dad had shipped us out of California for a little bit of time. And when I was like, oh, I'm going to go to school and become a psychologist, because everybody with trauma wants to help everybody, right? And so I went and did that for a while, and then I went into a family business and just wasn't working out, and was supposed to get married, runaway bride. Anybody that would ever get close to me, it was like push you away as fast as possible, because I can't get close to people because they leave me.
Yeah.
Right? So this was my whole life. And I became a criminal defense attorney ultimately, and I went into helping prostitutes. And the prostitutes have that whole trauma. You can't, some criminals are just bad, right? But there is a backstory to every single one of them if you actually took the time to figure it out. I don't believe that if they're bad, they should be let out of prison. I think they need to be taken care of here and then learn their lesson later in life and get it that way. So I'm not saying that criminals shouldn't be in jail. I went to jail. I did a crime. I accept what I did. But David was calling me Robin Hood, and it's really like Robin Her, because my victim was the courthouse, and I was helping prostitutes by falsifying court documents. Yes, I did that, so that they wouldn't have to go to jail for not doing their community service, because they were getting taken advantage of by their pimps, by their Johns, and by the court system, because nothing in the court system was trying to stop them from doing it. It wasn't an enhanceable crime. There was no penalty if they kept doing it other than paying this money and doing what they had to do, community service. So they were winding up in jail and then getting beat up and I'm hearing the stories because, once again, I have the imposter syndrome, so I don't believe I deserve to be an attorney. or have what I have. I never, ever tried to be that. It was all just thrown in my lap. I went to law school when I was 34 because they opened up a law school out here, and it was a joke. I never was going to practice law, and somebody said, you'll never get a job at a law firm. So I said, watch this, and I picked up the phone and made a call to one of the biggest Italian firms in town, Cristalli and Sagis, and the first job I got was because I was Italian, they were Italian, and they were handling the Sandra Murphy Ted Binion murder trial. And all of a sudden, now I'm a lawyer on the biggest murder case in, well, you guys know the case?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Sandra Murphy, Ted Binion, the murder trial, the silver, you tell them.
I never really knew the whole story. I mean, Binion owns the major casino that's downtown.
And she was allegedly having an affair with a guy, Rick Tabish, and then they were trying to steal his money and silver, and they killed him, allegedly.
Okay.
She went to jail. They were convicted. It got overturned. And on the retrial, our firm handled the retrial, and we got the conviction overturned. And as I sit here, I actually know who killed Ted Binion. I just wouldn't say it.
Okay.
But it wasn't her. And so she was completely wrongly accused.
Oh, wow.
And taken by the system, but she got her life back. So what I'm saying is I never even wanted to be in criminal defense. So I get like all the way up there now, and everybody knows who I am because I'm involved.
Right.
And I left the firm and started my own, and all the criminals wanted to come to me because my prices were way cheaper than theirs at the time.
Right.
And I was like, so that's how I got that little niche. And, you know, to this day, I still have friends that are lawyers and prostitutes. Like, I don't judge people. One thing I know is that I can't judge people. Some people deserve their penalty, and then if they learn from it, they could be rehabilitated. But anyway, for me, it was the imposter syndrome because I didn't feel that I was worthy. So I wanted to help everybody, even at my own expense, because in the end, I got indicted on like 147 felony counts, and all white collar. For about 30 clients, I did it. They stacked all the charges, so there's 4 or 5 charges stacked on each one. And you know, I will say
did they
this,
have you plead guilty to one charge?
I pled to 3. I will say this in front of cops. I could have probably gotten off scot-free if I would have done things that I was asked to do instead of not, and just taking my penalty. But I don't think my purpose in life was to be a lawyer. You know, it was never my passion. It's just something I got thrown into, and most people don't get thrown into those kind of careers.
Right.
And now I have an amazing business called Silent G Consulting, and the Silent G Consulting is never let them see you coming like the Silent G in lasagna.
Boy, that's an interesting
Only
case.
Italians would laugh at that joke.
I'm
Jewish
not
guy's like,
Italian,
what does
but
that
I'm
mean?
laughing.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting? You said something that was very interesting because, you know, as police officers, you know, we arrest people because that's our job, right? But sometimes, I mean, some officers are a little bit more passionate with the end result. So normally, like, if I didn't really care what happened at the end, like it was up to the district attorney and whatever happened. Like I never followed it through unless it was a rare case or something, you know? Did you?
No, I was the same as you. I didn't care.
So
My dad didn't care either.
No, because to me it was like fishing. Like I didn't fillet the fish. That wasn't my job. My job was to arrest the person that did something bad, and then I didn't really want to. I wasn't that emotional with it, you know. And what was very interesting in New York City, they don't really ask you in New York City, like, "Hey, Danny, what do you want to do with this guy? Do you want to, you know?" And so they just did whatever they did. So when I came out here, the city attorney would say, "Hey, Dave, what do you think about this case? What do we do?" I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you want me
They
to
would do that in Pennsylvania. Yes.
Like, do you want to fight it? Do you want to take him to
Yes.
trial? And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, just do your thing."
So
you
it's
know?
a
Like,
lot different.
It's different out here,
It's
you know.
different, a little bit
They
different
ask
here.
you, like, how far do you want to go with this?
When it's different, like if it's a vice cop or if it's special,
How committed they are.
Yeah, white collar crimes division. That's what, you know. So yeah.
But
they
you
get
said something
very
in regards to
active.
what you said, which is interesting, that there's no enhancement. Like, do you feel that, like, anyone so in Vegas, would you say it's very common for prostitutes? Like, how many prostitutes, like, give us a little bit of intro, like people that may not know Vegas. How is prostitution such a big thing in Vegas?
Such a big thing to who?
I mean, I guess to...
It's a money business.
Okay.
Basically, there's casinos that will allow certain ones in and trespass other ones because they have to keep their clientele happy, right? So it's like...
Do you really believe that? Because someone like Danny wouldn't
It's
believe
not that I don't...
No, I'm saying, do you believe... She's basically saying, like,
listen,
if there's a certain hotel, that they're not letting certain prostitutes in, but letting...
listen...
Maybe.
I can't say today.
I can't really
I can say
believe that.
15 years ago when I was in the
15 years ago?
game, absolutely.
Okay, maybe years ago.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
I guess years ago, but like today, I mean, I don't think like
There-
Resorts World's like, okay, we'll keep Lori here. We'll keep this one
Anybody
here.
that
This one's
wants
no good.
anybody that wants to do the research on this can
Okay.
actually verify what I'm about to say, but I'm not going to drop names ever. The Vice Squad, that was the ones that were out doing the investigations of the prostitutes, were actually taking blowjobs in return for letting them go. And a few of them are now in jail and got charged for this. And these were the kind of stories that were coming to me. Vicky, I don't know what to do. I can't trust the cops because they're telling me this. There was other guys that weren't on Vice that would know. So the girls' cars are marked, right? So that's how they know if they're in the casino. So the girls are always having to change their license plates and stuff and sneak in and out. And so once a girl's marked and they see her, they'll maybe stop her at like a Denny's or at a McDonald's and say, it's time.
I want something in exchange for your freedom.
Danny, did you do that when you were a cop?
Put you on the spot.
I don't want to put you on the
No,
spot
I
here.
did not.
We're only live here with all your Pennsylvania people watching you.
Listen, Angry Steve just texted me. He said about leaving certain prostitutes in and some not. He said that's 100% true. Steve, he said 100% true.
One thing I don't do
1000%.
is lie. I don't lie about my past. I don't lie about who I am. And if I refuse to say it, it's because I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings or incriminate somebody else. But if I'm asked a question, you can guarantee you're getting the answer.
Okay, so do you feel that it's just a money thing for the what is it? What was it? An AIDS awareness class? Is that what it was?
So those were different classes. There was
then?
something else that went on with that, but it was primarily the certificates and or the community service. So
Oh, it was either or, like
right,
right? Like 100 hours for-
sometimes they had to do both, right? And
So-
so there was a lot more obviously involved, but the bottom line is I wasn't benefiting in any way to put my license at risk to do what I was doing, other than the fact that I didn't feel like, and I didn't know it at the time. I did not know at the time that what I was doing was called imposter syndrome. That is clear chronic PTSD, running away from your. I didn't know any of that. This has been years of therapy, years of work on myself, years of empathy.
But you feel that you were helping you felt that you were helping the women because you didn't want them to be back in jail or being abused. I mean, like how do
They
you
still
feel?
were. Here's the thing. You can't help everybody. But I can tell you at least 20 women I helped personally get out of the game.
Okay.
That have actual careers now and lives that would tell you I was the best lawyer in the world. One thing, I talk about cops, right? But one thing everybody talks about is how they never like their lawyers. I never had one bar complaint from any of my clients, and they were all criminals. So they're always complaining about something. We know that, right?
Yeah.
Criminals are not your normal thinkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I never had a complaint. I always put my clients first. And the state bar, and California is going to give me my license back because of that.
I personally feel like prostitution is a different kind of crime than a lot of other crimes. And,
Right.
And I feel like what you're saying is right, that a lot of women that are in prostitution, it's because they have trauma, or, there's something that they haven't healed within themselves. And I'm not saying, that there aren't problems with prostitution in society. I think there can be, but it's not something like you're literally going out and hurting another person, or taking something from them. Or,
They're doing it because
bodily
they're
harm.
hurting.
Right.
They're
so to
hurting.
me, it's a very different type of probably profile in terms of a criminal than a lot of other
And
types
quite
of
frankly,
criminals.
that was like 95% of my business. I would not take, if you were charged with molesting a child and you came to hire me, I wouldn't even take the consultation. I would not take those kind of cases because I did not want to get involved. One way or the other, I don't feel that I can defend you or judge you, but I just had a blatant thing. I don't take the case.
Right.
I also, when I first got into criminal defense, I had to take whatever came across my plate. And one of the first clients that I ever got was a guy for armed robbery on the Strip, where he was like stealing your grandmother's purse, like while she was walking. And I didn't realize the type of person that could actually do that is dangerous and violent, right?
Yes.
And regardless of what happened in his childhood, the prostitutes were not dangerous and violent, okay? And this guy actually wound up scaring me so bad because he got a fixation on me that I wound up having to get a pit bull and like change my location.
gosh.
And ultimately made me make the decision that I wanted what's called a victimless crime business. And that's what my business was.
Victimless crime.
Right, because there's no victim. Who is the prostitute's victim? The prostitute is the victim.
Right.
Let me ask you something. This would be controversial, but for a lot of people out there, they think prostitution's illegal in Vegas, and it's not. Okay, it's legal in parts of Nevada that's outside Las Vegas.
And the rules on them are so strong, like they can't leave, they have to be drug tested. There's a lot of regulation in the sex industry.
So people out there that are not from Vegas, yes, we have brothels that are about an hour outside here of Vegas that they have legal. Do you think that if they legalize prostitution, it would help or it would make it worse?
Good question. I like that one.
Yeah.
Danny's concerned, about this issue.
So, I think you're saying Clark County then?
Yeah, Clark County.
Like if you legalize
it in Las Vegas, what would it do? I think it would help them or it would hurt them?
Technically, it's still happening here, but it's just under the radar.
It's red light, green light. It depends on who you're talking to, because even the courts don't do, like, if you get a DUI, right? And I'm trying to stop drunk driving. What do? I make it an enhanceable crime. The first one, you might have just had an accident, right? And let's just see. The second one, the third one becomes a felony, right? Prostitution is not enhanceable. Domestic batteries are enhanceable. So there's a difference.
Can you explain enhanceable for someone who's not familiar with that?
Okay, so enhanceable means if you get more than one, they stack and the penalty goes higher and higher and higher. I could have 100 counts of prostitution and my fine and what I have to do is just the same thing.
Right.
Okay,
and that's why there's no incentive on a legal level to stop, because it just...
No, people are not going to really stop, because if it's enhanceable, you're going to get more jail time.
Right.
You would eventually stop. So for DUI in Vegas, the first two are misdemeanors, and then the third one within 7 years jumps up to a felony.
Right.
So you're going to, oh my God, it's the second one. I used to tell people when I worked in the law firm, like, hey, you're going to be so careful. The next one is a felony. Do you understand? Yeah. And then when they get the felony, the third one, like, listen, you're lucky you're not going to go to prison. Especially if you killed someone. Could you imagine if you killed someone? So it's same thing with solicitation. It could be like the first two are misdemeanors, and then the third goes to gross misdemeanor, fourth goes to felony, and then like you must mandatory prison, right?
So when I'm saying that, I really just don't think, and nobody really cares about rehabilitating why these girls are doing that. I mean, honestly, how many women really are out there wanting to sell their body and give their money to a pimp?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If they were of sound mind.
That's one of my main issues with prostitution. On a theoretical level, I think it's fine, that we should have it be, allowed, and women should do that. But that's my issue, is that I don't feel like people that are healthy choose to do this.
And guess what? The ones that are healthy that choose to do it, and I know some of them, go ahead, girls.
But it's so rare.
Because so many women are doing it anyway with their husbands, right? And not in love and want whatever. So there's a whole nother side of that whole situation. But my point is, the ones that are being victimized are the ones that have the pimps, the ones that are being sex trafficked, the ones that are being taken across state lines. They're being told things that they believe, and they're feeling love for the first time in their life, and they've never had it.
Right.
And they don't know what they're getting into.
So do you think it legalizing would help or no?
Not for the true girl that is broken.
Right.
Legalizing it would probably help a few of the ones that I know, like that do the right thing, that they don't do trick rolls. They don't do that kind of stuff. They're just out there doing it, But I don't think legalizing it would help. And it's funny, women
Dave, I did get a text from somebody that used to work as security and stuff in the casinos, and I got a text and he said, that is right. He said if the prostitutes trick roll somebody and they know it, they'll throw them out. If they're not going to trick roll, trick roll is when
I can explain.
They don't have sex with you. They steal your money. They're gonna.
It's a trick.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's a trick and a roll. It's a trick and a roll. So many times.
Laura is from Nebraska. With most things.
I think that I'm not that naive or something. I just never heard that.
So a lot of the time, some of the guys and the guys are victimized. I guess some of those. The ones
Financial
that are trick
crimes.
rolling are victimizing the men, okay?
Yeah.
Because sometimes the game changed a little bit. They would actually go into the clubs as girls in there partying.
Yeah, not a prostitute.
The guy would think that he was just going to get lucky.
Yes.
And they mark him because of what he's wearing as a whale, right? And then they go upstairs and they're like, oh, baby, you've been sweating all night.
Take a shower.
Take a shower.
Yeah.
And while he's in the shower, they roll his
Grab
room
all
for
this.
everything. And so Vice actually does undercover stings with that. And they get the girls walking out the door.
This is like similar to what was covered in Hustler, the movie.
It was
with-
very, very realistic.
Yeah.
Very,
And
very
think about it, for the
realistic.
guy, if that happened to him,
He's
he's
not
not going to
gonna
report it to the
complain.
police.
Right.
He's got to
No,
tell
he
his
doesn't-
wife. He's
Oh,
got to
I've
tell
had
the
a
cops.
couple though running through
Right.
the casino naked trying to grab her. Oh, I've seen. You should
Right.
see. You should see the reports.
Welcome to Vegas.
You should see the reports I used to get.
Never boring.
Yeah.
We would get these. I worked for a defense attorney when I first came in. I worked for 3 years. So did Dave. And so I dealt with all of this. Usually, with the Johns too. When they'd come in, they'd do the same thing. I think we would charge them. I can't remember exactly what we would charge them, but they went through that class and then it would be dismissed. So I'm totally understand what you're saying, that there's no enhanceable or anything.
And let me ask you this: why would, if they're not kind of red light, green lighting this whole situation, why would you be able to have an out-call promoter's license to send girls to dance in people's rooms?
Right.
That's a licensed business in Clark County.
The dance in your room. So them guys handing them things out on the strip, girls to your room for $99
It's a licensed business in Clark County, and
Wow.
the girls are not.
So they're
vetted.
legit.
They're legit, and they're only allowed to dance.
Okay.
But then the girls can negotiate
yeah,
their
yeah, yeah,
tips.
yeah.
It's just like strip clubs, where, technically it's just supposed to be stripping, but in many,
Right.
many cases, obviously, there's a lot more of that
Yeah.
is
How do you know?
happening. I've heard the stories.
Interesting.
I've known some strippers.
So that's what. So my life has a lot of stories.
Psychic strippers,
Another thing that happened to me. I don't know if you
How come?
noticed. I walk with a limp, but I had to have bilateral hip surgery, and the surgeon shattered my hip, and I was told I was never going to walk again, and I was in a wheelchair for 3 years, and I was 450 pounds. My life has just been nothing but running away from my trauma, and then fixing it. Eventually, I'm 50 now. At about 45, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm going to jail. And I'm a very faith-based person, so I was like, okay, God, slap me 3 times, right? I'll listen now. And I just started doing therapy on myself and working on myself and becoming very faith-based and very grounded. And then I realized that my purpose is to not hide your story, because if you hide your story, you can't help somebody.
You can't heal
David
it
said,
either.
why are you going to come on this show and talk about what you did? And I was like, well, because if one person out there can actually realize from their trauma that they can heal, and I can help them, and they can reach us at the Frankie Foundation, and we can help a 5-year-old girl whose mother just died not turn into that prostitute, then I don't care about the money and the law and the fame and I've had all that, done all that. Now I just want peace.
What I was going to say is, and I applaud Vicky for coming on the show.
Oh,
talking
so do
about
I,
it.
yeah.
Definitely.
Because
Me too.
look, no one is perfect in this room. We all
Nobody.
made mistakes. Just because I wore a uniform and a badge doesn't mean, people think that changes you. The truth is, you're a human being. You go through emotions, right? You get loss of people with their lives. People get prescription medicine because they've been involved in an accident or PTSD from, all kinds of different things. So we're just human beings with cloth on there and a gold badge that some tin guy made, it
Right.
says, of course we take an oath, but like over years, and think about it, I became a cop at 22. So when I was 22, I'm different than I was 42, you know what I'm saying? And,
Right.
And then if you have traumatic experiences. So I really appreciate you sharing your story, because what I said to her was, I feel bad, like if you come on the show, I don't want you to look negative, because I really do like
Well,
Vicky.
let me say
And she said,
something.
no, I want to share my story because maybe I can help other people, and I commend that for her.
If somebody doesn't like me and they judge me for what I did, I don't want them as a client anyway, right? If they don't like the fact that I have a felony and they don't think that I can help their business, then they're judgmental and I don't need their business.
And
I'm taken care of.
Yeah.
However, one of the things that I like about you, Dave, and why I agreed to do this with you is because when I was in my trauma, I would never talk to him. We've known each other for years, right? I've learned the 4 Agreements is a book that changed my life. Don't make assumptions. Don't take anything personally. Be impeccable with your word and always do the best, okay? And I made a lot of assumptions about cops, and I made a lot of assumptions. And when I was at a real bad point, Dave helped me, and he was there. So
He's a good guy.
I've made assumptions about him, and so I've changed. He's a good guy, and
And Danny, it's a lesson for you. I'm a good guy. when it's late at night,
You should see some of the things I call
and
him.
you're beating up the pillow, this Dave Kohlmeier guy is trouble. You know,
Listen,
Vicky
only when he
Greco
gives
said it.
rewards out. When he gives rewards out, it just goes right through me.
And this is important. Today, we're actually making Danny director of disbursements of the reward division of the Problem Solver. You know what's funny? I love doing the reward thing, and I know you've heard me talk about reward money, which is interesting. We'll talk about Vicky's story, which is here as well with reward, because you don't know how she was involved recently. Because I was a cop, I was involved in Crime Stoppers. I was involved in the reward money, and I always felt that's the way to get people, right? You give people money and you give up some information because people want money, right? I always thought that was just a great thing, and I've been involved for many, many years, and that's why you resort back to, kind of the behavior or what you enjoy doing. And as a cop, I was doing it, and I was doing even marketing back then. I even came up with a phone number in Henderson, was 267 drug, which Crime Stoppers was a hard number to remember, so I came up, Anyway, long story short. So in regards to reward money, I told you about the lawyer and the reward money.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be Monday, actually. So tell the story that you told me real quick. We'll jump stories here, but about the person that died, and you told me what
On
you
the
did.
motorcycle?
On the motorcycle, yeah.
So
It's a good story.
I know a lot of people in town, and I'm not the problem solver or the crime solver, but a lot of people call me with their problems, because they know that I'm empathetic to them and that I listen. And one of my girlfriend's sons was driving to work. He had just got a promotion, so his shift started at 4 a.m. It was a landscaping company on a motorcycle. And he got hit and put into a coma, was in the hospital for about a week and died. But it was a hit and run from a stolen vehicle. Ugh. And with her death and what was going on with her, I was at like a crossroads because she was very angry, right? And I felt that you can't be angry. You have to work through it. And so I was talking to my mentors and stuff, and how can I help her? And they're like, allow her to be angry. Eventually she'll come out of it. How can you help her? How can you show her that you love her without supporting her anger? So I called Dave and I was like, hey, can you help me find the person who hit and run? Let's give her some closure. And so Dave put together a $10,000 reward, and they actually found the guy.
Wow, that's amazing.
So just to recap, there was one attorney in town that was doing like reward money, and I mentioned this to Danny before that I wanted to, because a lot of lawyers or even medical like doctors are fortunate that they do well financially in their business, that they're more likely to give money maybe for reward money, and getting reward money and sponsoring different crimes that happen where people are a victim in general. So I reached out to one attorney that was doing reward money, which was Sam Ryan Hadari with the Hadari Law Group. And I said, look, there's this, basically a murder took place, hit and run. The guy took off. Are you interested in giving reward money? And he wants to basically stop, these DUIs and deaths that have taken place. But this person stole a car, killed somebody, and then drove off, which I thought there was no way that they would actually catch this guy. So he did. So Sam Ryan Hadari Law Group did a news release, $10,000 reward. And I couldn't believe it, but I got a phone call from this woman that called Crime Stoppers, and then Crime Stoppers said to call me because of the Problem Solver show. And they said, look, I gave a Crime Stopper tip, and they gave the information. The guy's arrested. He was in jail for domestic violence, and they gave the tip, and there was, I think, maybe possibly DNA. And at the end, I think this coming Monday, there's supposed to be sentencing for this guy who's in jail. But the woman that gave the tip said because of the money, which, there's nothing wrong with it, because of the incentive, she called it in. And basically the guy hopefully goes to jail for a long period of time.
That's awesome. That's great.
So it's one of the first rewards, even though it was sponsored, by Sam Ryan Hadari. He basically made it happen. And it goes to show you that if you really want to stop crime, maybe offering the reward money is a good incentive, because when people go out there, like, look, a lot of people offering reward money these days. I'm not going to go out and do a hit and run and so on. So, I commend the Hadari Law Group for actually giving the reward money. And it'd be very interesting. I want to go to court to see what happens. But if it wasn't for Vicky calling me, aka the Problem Solver,
right?
It wouldn't have happened. Which is kind of crazy. Because even when people call me, even though we're retired cops, it's not like we're going out to investigate. And what's very interesting is that we deal with Pioneer Productions out of London, and we deal with Sarah, who's a great person. And she says that we're like citizen journalists.
Yes.
And it's very interesting because we're using the podcast format to get our message out, and then also using micro content here at the Sticky Paws studio to get it out with news releases and using reward money. So it's very, very different. And they feel it's very authentic to today's way of actually solving crime.
And she knows that they would have never gotten caught if it wasn't for you. And, just one other story I want
That's
to tell
awesome, Dave.
That's a good story.
One other story I want to say
to get justice.
to redeem myself if anybody really does hate what I've said so far today is that a lot of things that my law firm actually did do because of our connections with the sex industry was when girls are actually sex trafficked, there's a difference. That's like where they're young, they're under 18, they're taken out of their home, they're taken to another state. A lot of them are like Midwest weirdo states where they're like, they have advertising for them in the rooms and all that stuff, and the girls don't even know where they are. They could be drugged, or they could have gone willingly because they were talked about going, and the cops can explain that to you. But a lot of the times, and one in particular, because of who my firm was and what we did, the FBI reached out to me and said, can you help us find her through your network? And at the time, my clients really did like me a lot, whether it was because I was helping them get out of their cases or because they knew that I cared. When I called them criminals for help, they found that girl in Iowa.
Wow.
And brought her home.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, do you feel, we're fortunate that Laura's here today. She was in Egypt traveling the world in her jet last week.
She has her own private jet. Yeah, she goes all over.
So are you okay if she does like a psychic reading on you here?
I think she's already been doing one, but sure.
So why don't we do this? We haven't done it in general. Let's dim the lighting just a little bit, and if it's okay with Laura to do that.
Yeah.
Am I saying it
I'd
right?
be
Just a
happy
psychic
to.
reading?
Yeah, and I definitely feel your family, spirits there. So I'm a medium, so I do readings where I connect with a person's path and purpose and provide information for them, but also I connect with spirits. And a person.
Tell me what mine looks like, because apparently I have two with me all the time. Am I right?
Well, yeah. Let me just tune in. So I'm going to call on both of our angels and guides, and my angels and guides, as well as Archangel Michael, Raphael, Shamuel, Jophiel, Azrael, Metatron, any other angel who's of the light. Please protect the space, increase clairvoyance and psychic ability, and make sure that whatever comes through is for the highest good. Well, first, I do get your brother, so I just want to connect in with him, and he just shows me giving you like love and kind of blowing you kisses. And he is showing me like you being on your path. So, any concerns you've had about that or question, like he's like, you're doing exactly what you came here to do. Then he also wants you to know that his death, it was like that was basically planned, and so sometimes things happen and people die kind of before it was sort of planned out. We do generally plan our lives before we're born. And in his case, that was planned. So he wants you to know that. So that it's not like something got messed up or something. I mean, even though it was like painful and traumatic, that was his plan coming in. And also it was also part of your plan that you go through this trauma and that you're here to essentially, help others. You've basically talking about it during the show, but you are here to have gone through your own healing journey and then to be a model for others to help them heal on their own path, and also to show that you can essentially heal through anything and the importance of working on your own sort of trauma to not continue the cycle. But you have many, many different spirit guides. So your brother really felt like he wanted to communicate. All right, so I see lots of angels. One of the ones that's coming through very strongly for you is Archangel Jophiel. Are you familiar with her? Sometimes also pronounced Jophiel. Her name means beauty of God, and she works a lot with women. She's a female angel, has a very feminine energy, and you are here to help women and bring in kind of beautiful energy. I mean, even what you've worked on in the past and also what you're working on now is about kind of bringing beauty to light and, bringing things that have been in darkness to light. So she's one of your main guides, and you can definitely call on her and ask her for help. The angels, they honor our free will. So once we ask them and specifically invite them for help, then it opens the door for them to specifically do so. Are you familiar with the idea that you have your own psychic abilities? Is that something you've ever thought about or been aware of?
I just don't talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I'm just getting to say. You're very psychic and
empath or seer.
Yes. Yeah. And the more you kind of acknowledge that and use that for yourself, the better everything goes for you. A lot of people misunderstand with psychic abilities. Like, yes, you can learn to become a, trained professional psychic like me, but if you learn to tap into your own abilities, it's more like your own inner navigation system. So for you, just, yes, you are psychic, and just the more you kind of acknowledge it and tap into it, the better everything goes for you. They showed me for a long time, it was like you had like blinders on, and
when
now
you're
it's
done
like,
talking, I'll tell them why I had to put the blinders on after something that very bad happened.
okay, yeah. So that just feels like the main things that your guides wanted to share. But Jophiel is like basically also sending you so much love and support, and that the work that you're doing right now is so needed in the world, because so much of everything we're talking about at its core is this kind of attack on women and the criminalization of stuff and trauma to women. And so it's such an important time to shift that paradigm and support women instead of like attacking and criticizing them in various ways.
Thank you.
You going to share?
Oh, so the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I don't really talk about it a lot, and I wasn't planning on talking about it today, but I was a CASA. Do you know what that is? A court-appointed special advocate for children in the foster care system while I was a licensed attorney. I went through the process. It's always been a passion to help children in foster care, because when they age out of the system, they have nothing. They've had nothing, and then they have even nothing more. And so I was court-appointed special advocate to girls that were going to be aging out of the system. And the girl that I had, she was, whatever happened to me, happened to her. This is the only part of the story I can't usually tell without crying, okay? And I could do it now, but whatever happened to her was just terrible. When I say terrible and you think you're feeling sorry for what happened to me, what happened to her was awful. And she was in the system since the time she was 3. And we connected, because I do connect, right? On a higher level with her.
Yeah.
And when I got indicted, I was removed from being a court-appointed special advocate, and when I was out on bond, told that if I had any contact with her, I was going to be going to jail to await my trial. So she calls me in crisis in April. She's going to age out of the system in June. Calls me in crisis from a number I didn't know, so I answered it. Mm-hmm. And I said to her, I said, you know, I can't talk to you right now. You don't know what's going on, but know that I love you, and know that when you age out of the system, I'm taking you with me, and I'm going to take you. Just please get through the next 2 months. And I hung up with my own best interest, not going to jail for violating, because how could I help her if I was in jail anyway? That night, I was laying in bed sleeping, and I woke up feeling like I was being choked to death. And I couldn't breathe. And the next morning, and I just went back to bed, and I didn't know what that was. And the next morning, I got a phone call that she hung herself at that 2:00 in the morning. And so, you know, what I learned from that experience is when David says, why do you want to put yourself in that position? Because if I would have done something that night, she might still be here. It's not about me. I'm a survivor. I'm resilient. I've been to jail. I've had a broken hip. I've been told I was never going to walk again. Half my family was killed in a car accident. You know what? I went through all of that, but now it's time, like, you have to actually take time and get to help people sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And
Yes.
I mean, that's so much pain. And one of the things I'm getting to say on this sort of psychic spiritual level is that sometimes when people are going through so much, they just see no other choice but to end. And we shouldn't judge them for it, have so much compassion for them and help as much as we can for someone to not make that choice, but also that when people do make that choice, a lot of times they're just alleviating their suffering, and
they don't have an outlet or understand how.
Yeah.
And, you know, luckily I never went that route. Yeah. But I could have many, many times.
So, Vicky, I really appreciate you sharing, you know, several different stories. Like I said, definitely traumatic experiences. You know, I applaud you for, you know, going through so much. Like I said, sometimes we think that we've gone through a lot in our lives, which is nothing compared to what you've gone through in general. I couldn't even imagine losing a family member. It's better if you lose a family member in general when your parents get older and so on. But for what you've gone through, and then also trying to help people and so on, and you're still helping people, and I commend you for what you do, you know, with opening up, you know, new businesses and LLCs and stuff like that. You still are helping people and giving a part of you and trying to help them, and also giving them, you know, positive energy to get to another level.
And part of what I do is set up 501c3s. And so because I set up nonprofits, I meet so many people that want to help. And I have so many good people that are in my life that have amazing nonprofits now. And I'm watching them thrive and helping them get grants and watching, like, so because of what I am able to do with my new business, I'm actually able to help my purpose through helping other people find theirs.
You know, Danny, I was just say.
I do have a question.
Yeah, and I was just say one thing though before your question. I know sometimes you get sentimental because you're on social media with your parents and stuff like that, being older in general. But could you imagine, losing family member at such a young age?
I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I lost my parents now. My dad about 12 years ago, my mom last year, and I mean, I'm 54 years old and it still broke my heart. It bothers me every single day. I couldn't even imagine being that young and having that.
You just
happen
have to know that they're happy, like they're with you. I know a lot of
Right.
people. I don't talk about this side ever because people think you're crazy, right? But you're not. Like, they're with you. They love you. They want you to be happy. They're so happy for you right now.
Let me tell you something. I'm not a psychic, but I can guarantee that you could cook very well. Am I right?
do.
I knew it already. You have the Italian last name. I already know it.
That's why Cristalli and Saji's hired me at the first law firm,
That's
because I
exactly
told them I would make them really good meatballs and
good.
lasagna.
So we're gonna have
the
to have her-
silent G in lasagna.
We're gonna have to have her come back. She's gonna have to make some lasagna and some meatballs. And
All right, that sounds good. I bet you'd
So-
be excellent.
Anybody else have any last minute questions in general?
No, the only thing I say is, hey, I totally understand, and America is forgiving, especially if you admit that you're wrong. And I know you did it for all the right reasons. And I'm going to go with Tupac said one time, I never committed a crime I didn't have to commit. And that's how I feel what you did. You were just trying to help. And I think America forgives you. And it's great that you took a negative into a huge positive and you're helping these women. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. Let's say amen.
Yep.
But absolutely. Vicky, thanks so much for joining us today, sharing your story in general. And as usual, Laura, thanks so much for sharing and trying to do some psychic. How am I saying it? I always feel like I'm messing this up, but using your psychic ability to extract some good information, especially,
Perfect.
Yep.
Danny the Crime Solver, thanks so much for sharing about Idaho.
Thanks,
And
David.
hopefully they really catch this guy. It's
Hopefully
just
by
crazy.
next week, somebody's arrested. Get this guy off the street.
It's getting upsetting every day that goes
Yep.
by because this could happen in any community. So
Yep.
remember again that anybody can call Crime Stoppers in any state. Here locally at 702-385-5555. And then we have through the Crime Solver 1-833 tips cash. So if anybody wants to share any type of tips for any information, it doesn't have to be specifically just about arrest and conviction. I mean, if you know someone that's being whether it's human trafficking or prostitution, you want to help somebody, someone's a victim in general, please report that by calling the police 311-911. Report this information. Get some people that need help. And again, I'm David Kohlmeier, the Problem Solver. If you want to get in touch with Vicky, contact me, 702-999-1111, 702-999-1111. Thank you so much. Be safe. See you next Thursday.